The most critical question to ask when you're staffing an aviation team is, are we staffing for the operational demand, or are we staffing for strategic need? And by that, we mean, are you having the capacity to do leadership, professional development, communication, to engage the team in the same way that you would within your organization? Most calculations we find aviation teams use in the executive and they report really functions on operational demand. There may be some limitations to that approach. Think about staffing levels in the same way you would your local hospital. If you built an emergency room, you would ask the question, how many bays do we need? Not unlike how many aircraft do we have? And then you would ask the question, how many doctors do we need to staff that? I'm pretty sure that if we were staffing our local emergency rooms, we would want the staffing level to be at a point where if we needed to use an emergency bay, there would be a doctor available. If it was only staffed for the operational demand, there's probably a high likelihood that we might need that bay someday and there's no doctor available. Much in the same way that we look at hospital staffing, we encourage aviation teams to be staffed for capability, not operational demand. Strategically, we'll look at the demand over long periods of time and ask how many assets do we need. That's part of a fleet planning process. But in the short term, we staff so that we have full capability of the assets there, whether we use them or not. It's critical to understand why you have the aircraft. Are they there for a strategic response? Or are they there just as an efficiency model to do transportation? In the efficiency model, then you might staff more for operational demand. In the strategic model, then you're going to staff for capability. We need to be able to use them when we need to use them. Organizations sometimes focus on the headcount of aviation teams because in their business, downtown, that is oftentimes one of the largest costs. The challenge is that's not the case with most aviation teams. FTE costs are not your highest costs. It is the capital costs. We oftentimes challenge our clients to reconsider their approach toward staffing. Oftentimes, they're limiting staffing and reducing the capability of an expensive asset. Usually the number one expense for an aviation team are capital costs. One of the questions to ask when considering staffing levels is the amount of demand that you expect to serve. Are the assets expected to be available 5 days a week, 6 days a week, 7 days a week? That's a critical question to answer. One of the tools we oftentimes see is the use of elastic capacity, most often in the form of independent contractors. While this topic is critical, it's beyond the scope of what we can do today. But we would encourage you to really understand how independent contractors are used, because oftentimes this introduces a risk to the business that is unquantified. There are both legal and operational implications when one uses independent contractors. One of the other elements of staffing that is oftentimes overlooked by our clients is the cost of onboarding an employee or letting an employee go. The turnover costs with aviation employees can oftentimes exceed $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. It's a number you're not used to in the rest of your business. So changing staffing levels, strategic choices in that arena are critical because the costs can be significant. And finally, we really encourage our clients to weigh heavily their strategic approach to staffing, its impact on the capability of the asset, risk management, and the efficiency of the team is directly impacted.